Kia ora everyone and welcome back to the annual plan meeting. We will move on to item 9, which is the summary of submissions on the annual plan, with Ms Carolyn Allen and Ms Janet Fraser to speak to the report, and Chief Executive and General Managers will be available if required.
Thank you, Mayor Sophie. We're happy to take questions.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Treadwell.
Tēnā koutou. Just a quick one around the inclusion of the social media commentary on these. When you're assessing those or considering them for inclusion, is there any consideration for whether or not the accounts are genuine in terms of not being, sock puppet accounts or that kind of thing?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not 100% sure because we get the social media poll from our web team, but to my knowledge, we don't do any. What sort of account is it? To my knowledge.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Walker, then Councillor Gaylor.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everyone. And good morning to you guys. I think I've asked this many times before, but any learnings from this process that maybe we can look to review as we move into the long-term plan? And I think specifically around how do we get the thoughts of our Pacifica and Maori community, and how do we try to urge those people under 20 to maybe engage, because of course they're just as ever I think it's 1% on, it's a generic question.
Thank you for the question. For the 10-year plan process, I guess with this consultation being quite light touch, I think there's definitely opportunity in the long-term plan process to be a bit more targeted for some of those areas we don't hear from.
Councillor Gaylor, then Councillor Gary.
I know it's becoming quite common practice now to include the Facebook comments because they are representative of a sector of society, but I'd just like to know why this council does it.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
I'd just like to know why this council includes Facebook comments in its representative sample of public opinion.
For the exact reason that you said when asking the question, because it does represent an element of feedback from our community.
Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mayor. Tēnā kōrua. I just wanted to offer up or check in paragraph 21, the submission from the Presbyterian Support Otago. They did in their submission also offer support, and that isn't noted, and I think it's important that we do note that.
Thank you for the comment, Councillor, and I'll make a note of that.
Can I just ask a question on page 103, paragraph 46? This is about the mana whenua submission, and in the response to that submission, would there be discussion around Te Pai Māori, which is the appropriate place for much of the governance and technical level questions to come in?
Thank you, Mayor Sophie. So for responses to submitters, typically we'd only respond to those requesting amenity or funding. The general submissions in this report, we wouldn't respond to all of the submitters.
This was from Turunaka or Otako, so I just wonder if it would be good just to respond and talk about Te Pai Māori, if that's possible, please. Councillor Ong.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I want to follow on with some points made by the fellow councillors. Councillor Treadwell, the first point is, I want to ask on the social media marketing, what is the type of cost here? And I will say from my own personal experience, on my own personal social media, which has been also highlighted by one fellow councillor, it costs me nothing. At the same time, I've been told I'm the most widely viewed, possibly, social media personality in New Zealand, on Facebook at least. That was something that was not said by me, but said by another fellow councillor on social media. The other question is, number 2.
Can we just have one question at
Okay.
a time, please? I think the question is around, was
So
there
how
any
much
cost
is-
spent on
How
social
much
media?
is the cost for this?
Sorry, Councillor, I don't have the cost details with me.
Come back to us with that, please. And the broader figures for digital marketing as well, please. And my second question is that, yes, as pointed out just now, this is not necessarily representative of our community when we see what the posts are. So I will say from personal experience as well, it is a tiny, tiny percentage of those who comment on my personal photos.
So have you got to pay, have you got a question?
Well,
you can-
I
there will
wanted
be
to just
time for a
highlight that
speech.
same point.
There will be
So-
time for a
So do we
speech
need
or
to
question.
have, in the context of our council, do we need to have those comments put out on response to our social media page? Because that, in fact, some cases, it may not be publishable or should not be publishable, I think. Do you not agree? Are these comments-
There are comments, if you look up, there are comments attached, if you read the paper. Councillor Lund, then Councillor Galen.
The submission from Presbyterian Support did speak about increasing assistance. They were concerned about the level of hardship being experienced by many families. And can you tell me in the last 5 years how many applications the Dunedin Council received for rates relief for extreme financial hardship, which I understand is a policy that we have?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not off the top of my head, but certainly not many. But I can come back to you with the actual numbers. It's sorry. It is a very narrow scope of that policy, which we are looking at for the 10-year plan.
Just so council knows, because there are councillors around this table, including Councillor Geary, that say that
You can ask, when you, this is question time, if you want to make a speech,
Okay.
you can do that at speech
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
Councillor Galen.
Thank you for the report and also for the comprehensive nature of it. One question I do have, and I may have not, maybe it's here and I just haven't seen it, is the comparison from other years as to the level of engagement that we have had in terms of the number of submissions that we've had from the public. Are the numbers going up or down? Is the level of engagement healthy?
I'll preface this by saying I've only been at the council for a relatively short period of time, so I haven't been involved in many engagements. But from what I understand, it can be variable from year to year, depending on if it's a long-term plan or if it's an annual plan, what is the sort of scope of the consultation. So from what I understand, in past years, we might have asked a couple of questions that sort of appealed to the broader community, whereas with this consultation, we had the one question on the rating differential, which is maybe more of a targeted type question. So I don't know if that helps answer, but it is quite variable, just depending on what it is we're consulting on.
Sandy, you would probably, excuse me, Chief Executive through the Chair, you would know.
Sorry, I was slightly distracted. So what was the question?
Just how healthy these figures are in terms of consultation for the council over the years that you've been here. How does this look to you?
Look, the most consultation I think we've ever had in my time responses was over curbside recycling, where we got close to 10,000. So that's the measure. And so I think these were slightly lower than I would have expected, probably. But again, there's a lot going on. And it's really, and this was a light touch consultation. My expectation is with the 10-year plan, where you have some really chunky items for your community, that you would see more engagement. But for an exceptions-only document where there are limited topics being consulted on, I think the figures are solid.
Deputy Mayor's happy to move. I'm happy to second. Would you like to speak to it?
I don't want to diminish the importance of all the submissions we've received, but I'm conscious that we've got very limited time this morning, so apart from wishing to thank the submitters and acknowledge that we've all read all the submissions, I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. Speakers, Councillor Lund.
I would like to
2
commend
minutes.
the submission from the Presbyterian Support Association because it points out a serious flaw in our council policies. And we as a council, councillors around this table say when ratepayers complain about rate increases, if there is hardship, there is a policy that people can apply to. Now the facts are that in the last 5 years, the Dunedin City Council received 7 applications for extreme financial hardship, and that is because, as Ms Allen has confirmed, that the criteria is so onerous, it's so difficult, that people don't even apply. Instead, they apply to the central government rates rebate scheme, which gives a maximum of $805, and hundreds of ratepayers in the city have used that. And so I think that in this, up until now, and I'm very heartened that the staff are in fact reviewing this policy, that I'm very, very pleased to hear that, but it's been essentially it's been disingenuous of this council to say we have rates relief available for those that are struggling, because simply there has not been.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge the work that staff did on this. For most people in the community, they are totally oblivious to the annual plan. And why is that? Not because of the efforts of our staff, but because, as the Chief Executive said, there's an awful lot going on for them right now. We've discussed the cost of living crisis and all of the things that are burdening our community. And so it's shouldn't be a surprise to us that the level of engagement is not particularly high, and also as an exceptions only annual plan, that's another good reason, but there are always learnings to be had. I raised the matter of Presbyterian support and their offer because they have sat down with staff previously to see what they could do to assist and help people in the community suffering hardship and finding the rates difficult through various pathways. That has happened before. The offer was still on the table. It's important we acknowledge it, and they can be of great assistance there. So to those who submitted, thank you. To the staff who did so much work in a short time, thank you. And let's look to the long-term plan and how we can learn from this experience and do even better to engage our community. But it is going to be a challenge because people have a lot going on.
Councillor Gaylor.
I actually disagree with that. I don't think it's because people have a lot going on. I think it's because there is a massive complexity of information here that people often struggle to get the nuggets of information that they need out of these annual plans and out of our estimates. The fact that we had so many proposals come to us on Wednesday would tell us that in actual fact, if we had put some of those to the public in this annual plan, then perhaps we would have got greater engagement, because clearly following that there has been a bit of an uproar around some of the items that we agreed to at this council table. So in future I would prefer that we put more information into our annual plans and be more honest with our public. We had 7 submitters who did not feel they had enough information to comment, which is pretty telling, really. For each one of those 7, I think there are many more behind them. We also had 16 submissions telling us that the rates were too high, and we continue to spend and keep those rates high, and we're not listening. So I think that while staff have done as best job as they can, I know, having worked in communications, how you can only work with the information you're given, but I think that we can do a much better job of highlighting the issues, because the public, quite frankly, don't have aren't in a situation where they have too much on. They're just simply, it's not capturing their attention because the information is not being put to them in a clear and concise manner.
Your right of reply.
Just briefly, that this council decided that we were going with year 2 of the long-term plan, and that it was not needed to do a full-blown major consultation document, that we would save money because there was no major changes to what we had previously gone out last year with, and that was the decision of this council table. Thank you.
Right, I will now put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That is carried. And we'll move on to item 10, funding requests from the annual plan. And welcome back, Ms. Allen and Ms. Fraser.
We're happy to take questions, Mayor Sophie.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Chambers and Councillor Vandervis.
Yeah, obviously it's all about money and distributing the budget, and yet based on the submissions and feedback from the annual plan amendment, there are only 3 requests for funding out of all that process in this paper here. It seems extraordinary. Do you think maybe perhaps the wording of that people who are submitting should be given more clear instructions to say that if you want to ask for money, write a dollar figure down. Otherwise, it won't get discussed further.
What I'd say is I think the council over the last few years has worked quite hard to channel funding requests into the 10-year plan process and provide some certainty for requesters over a 3-year period, rather than doing annual funding through the annual plan process. At the same time, we've got the grants process, which is going on today. So there's been quite a conscious decision to structure things differently and have them done on a 3-yearly cycle. So it's deliberate, and you're now, I think, seeing the outcome of that strategy, with only 3 requests this time. And remember, we did a full-blown 9-year plan last year, which was the opportunity to fund a lot of organisations, and they were funded as part of the 9-year plan.
Microphone.
Only Waikowati Coast Community Board requests for increased funding got on the table, but we know that other boards would wish that funding to be increased. So however they worded their submission didn't get onto the table, if you understand me.
And I understand that, and I'll make sure that staff have a look at that. But again, the boards all know that the process is linked more to the 10-year plan process if you're going to get longitudinal increases in funding.
Councillor Vandervis and Councillor Walker.
On page 123, the Te-Aroa grant, pardon me, it appears to be a new grant. There wasn't one last year. Can someone explain what that's for? It's proposed to be $61,000.
Thank you, Councillor. I can probably talk to that one. That's a grant that's always been in our books but wasn't actually recorded in our grant schedule. We had it recorded in a different part of our, different section of our finances. It was identified through the current budgeting round, and it was transferred out. To my knowledge, no funds have been paid out of that fund for the last few years, but for clarity, we've included it in the grant schedule this year.
So what is the grant for, and who is it to?
Kia ora, Councillor. I believe it is a grant that was set up with the last environmental wellbeing strategy to support projects through that.
And the money would go to whom?
Actually, I don't know, because it hasn't been paid out since my time being here.
I can probably answer that, and I think that Councillor Walker could answer that. It was part of the Te Aotearoa environment strategy, and there were some grants given out for that. But when the steering group went into abeyance, they were the people that were giving the grants out, and that has just sat on the books since then. So it's part of the grants review.
Given that it hasn't been paid out and that the Grants Review Committee hasn't done anything about it for a few years, could I suggest that we just drop it off the list?
You can probably...
My next question is page 124. Predator-free Dunedin and New Zealand Centre of Digital Excellence Code. They appear not to have had a grant last year, and I'm wondering why it is that they are basically listed as having grants this year of 150,000 each.
I think it was agreed during the 9-year plan to fund them.
So have they had grants in the distant past, or was it just last year that they missed out? I seem to remember that we have given significant monies to Code for quite a few years.
From memory on the report, and somebody might be able to answer this better than me, that Code had government funding. We need to go back to the report to get that one, but we were putting, we have to go back to the long-term plan to answer that question fulsomely.
Okay, thank you.
But it did go through the LTP process and was agreed on. Councillor Walker, then Councillor Ong.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I'll speak to the predator-free Dunedin just to clear it up. They used to get funding, Councillor Vendus, and then they came to the 9-year plan and were happy to have that lag year, and we agreed in the 9-year plan that it would start again from this year. So that was just agreed in the 9-year plan last year. So they were happy to take that year break because they had funding available.
Which raises another question. Were they happy because they'd basically completed the peninsula eradication of possums? What is the predator-free money for?
Predator-free Dunedin has a massive portfolio of projects it works on throughout the city, and one of those projects is the Otago Peninsula work. There's a huge body of work that group does. So it's multifaceted.
And the predators that are no longer on the peninsula, are they mostly possums that they're looking at for the rest of the city?
Yeah, but remembering the predator-free peninsula needs extensive funding to maintain the peninsula as predator-free, and that currently with possums, and also now there's an eradication around mustelids, stoats, weasels, etc., and rats. But predator-free, I mean, probably take this offline, because I can sit over a coffee with you and explain the whole.
Let's share the submission that came in last year, because there was a submission that came to the long-term plan this time last year.
Yeah. Okay. Back to my question. Yeah. This is probably for the CEO, and it goes back to the previous question, I think, from Councillor Chambers. Wasn't it the case that previously many groups would come every year asking for funding, and it became quite laborious? So what happened at the 9-year plan last year is we put a bunch of those groups onto revolving multi-year funding. So that's why this year there's less, because they're on multi-year.
I wouldn't characterise it as laborious, though. Yeah, but again, it's a deliberate change in approach. So the funding has just been done more efficiently, with agreements put in place to ensure that the funding is applied in the way that it was requested for, and with reporting back processes as well that we didn't used to have. Yeah. So no, yeah, and indeed it is a more efficient process, but more importantly, it's more efficient for the submitters. So they're not because they're largely volunteers. So rather than having to go through our bureaucratic processes every year, they're now in a 3-year cycle.
Councillor Ong, then Councillor Gaylor. Councillor Ong.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We have more than $500,000, to be exact, $525,000 that's assigned to Premier and major event grants. And firstly, I want to ask if we can quantify going forward, because this is supposed to bring commercial revenue from these events into our city. Can we quantify how much this is providing back to our city in terms of commercial revenue, indirectly or directly? And my second question is, since this is stated as...
Can you just ask one question at a time, please?
Yeah, there is a cost-benefit analysis provided with each of those events. There is a paper coming to Council shortly that does a summary of the events for the last year.
Could you summarise in one word what is that benefit amount in a simple figure? So we have a cost here, which is 525,000. What is that benefit amount in one simple figure, please?
As Mr. Costello said, there is a report coming to council which will go through that.
Okay. Do you have the figure offhand here right now?
No, we don't.
Okay. My second question is, it states premier. That means first of its kind. We have not had first of its kind concerts in a while. What are these premier events that we are assigning this budget for? And can you give an example?
I would recommend that you read the festival and events plan, which underlines what a premier event is.
Can you give one example of a premier event, please?
Otago Rally. Right. Rally of Otago. Councillor Gaylor.
Thank you for this. I am interested in the reporting back that you just mentioned, and how comprehensive that is, and whether or not, for a decision like this around quite a lot of money, whether or not we can have a report in future that gives us at least some information about how this money is being spent, or have some sort of report about the success or otherwise of these grants and how the money is being used.
Well, what generally happens is the community reports back on their successes informally to you by way of a submission for when they come and ask for the next lot of money. But I'll check with the staff about what the process is in the back end. Because it's relative.
The grants subcommittee deal with that. So all of the information goes to the grants committee. So there is a request for the funding. The grants committee, of which Councillor Sims is now the chair, looks at all of the proposals, and there is a report back as well with the against the KPIs.
Those grants that are subject to SLAs have annual reporting that is managed through staff delegations.
Is there any reason why, given the large sum involved, we can't have some sort of summary, next time this happens?
That would probably come to council during possibly the long-term plan, because this is about when we're setting up the pots of money for those things, for events, and we're looking at the grants review as well.
I'm happy to take this offline, and because we did. As part of induction, we do explain how some of this stuff works and where the reporting is. So I'm happy to do that.
Councillor Vanders.
Have the grant subcommittee been through all of these line item grants and basically agreed that what's proposed for the 2026-27 draft budget, that these grants are appropriate and give value?
I'll just check with the Deputy Mayor. A paper came to council, didn't it, in January? Or when did the last paper come about the grants? Because it did come.
Yes, I think early in this training, and I'll speak on behalf of the chair of the grant subcommittee. We officially met for the first time at 11 o'clock today. So
But papers around grants have come to council annually recently, because we have been looking at the grants.
So you're saying that the grant subcommittee haven't actually approved all of what
They don't. The council approves, and this has come before council before.
So what do the grant subcommittee actually do then?
They approve the grants. So
they've approved all of these grants?
The allocation of the grants. So there's a number of pots for the grants, and those come to the grants subcommittee, a bit like the heritage committee, which we're part of. So there would be applications for the grants, and then the grants subcommittee assess those. I think that's been happening for how long? Decades maybe. I'm not quite sure when we started giving grants, but that's the process, is the application process, and then the grant subcommittee decide on the allocation of the grants. It is the council that decides the quantum.
So the grant subcommittee, I'm still not clear. Have they approved these grants? We don't have time to go through them line by line now. Have the subcommittee approved all of these proposed grants? There's millions and millions of dollars here.
Yeah, go for it.
If I could jump in, Lee. So if we look at, so today's meeting's around the contestable events grants, which is the first line on page 123. The grant subcommittee could elect to spend up to that budget amount, or in fact could decline all of the grants if they felt that they were not worthwhile. So it's a budget amount rather than that's available to be granted. But the point that Deputy Mayor Lucas was making, our first meeting is at 11 o'clock today.
I do wonder about a situation in which, as council, we are essentially being seen to tick off the availability of this money now, without being able to really go through line by line and question them, and that the grant subcommittee is then charged to, given these individual pots of money, be able to decide whether or not they provide sufficient value to be confirmed. Is that roughly correct?
That is correct. That is what's been happening for gosh, probably as long as you've been on council, that there has been grants pools and there has been a grants subcommittee that approves them. And we have had grants reports come to council in the last number of years that have talked about the allocation of the money. I think that Deputy Mayor Lucas was particularly interested in this, and it has been the process for many years, and there is a festival and events plan that talks about the funding for that. So we have looked at that funding. This is not asking you now to approve that funding. This is asking to considering the request for funding from submitters, and we've had 3 submitters here that have asked for funding.
Okay, thank you for that. Just my final question at this point, regarding the service level agreements for the DCC-owned companies, the Dunedin Centre Event Attraction Fund and Community Access Fund. Is it the case that these numbers, $2 million plus for events attraction and $750,000 for community access, is it the case that these amounts have been proposed in this process and that they have been approved for at least the last several years?
It would be part of the 10-year plan. Sorry, Carolyn.
Thank you, Councillor. One of those amounts was changed with the 9-year plan, but the other amounts have been in for many years in the budget. But in the 9-year plan, there was an increase to the Event Attraction Fund, and that's carried through as per the 9-year plan.
But they have been paid off. They have been paid as per what's on the thing, at least last year and the year before.
Yes, but with the exception of the Event Attraction Fund, the year before it wasn't that much. It was 400,000 prior to 25-26.
Councillor Gayler. Oh, sorry, Gary. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just a little confused because I just wanted to check, was Councillor Vandervis not on the grant subcommittee at one point? I don't think it was in my time, but I would have thought somebody who'd been on the grant subcommittee would know the process.
I can answer that question directly by saying that yes, many years ago, probably 10 years ago, I was on the grant subcommittee and was so disappointed with how grants were distributed and with the criteria under which grants were being distributed against the council policy that I resigned from the grant subcommittee and haven't gone there since. I don't believe it's been an effective use of councillor funds.
Just a follow-up question. I don't know if councillors are aware that the criteria and the checking against council policy has changed and is more efficient since perhaps the time the councillor's been on.
I'm very aware of the change that was made, and in fact that was the main reason I resigned, the change that...
Right, I think that we will have this debate offline and we will move on. We're very aware of time. We've got an hour and a half to get through the rest, and we will share the grants reports that have come recently to council. I have no more questions. I believe there's some funding. Are there any, Sandy, are there any resolutions for this or not?
I have no resolutions specifically related to funding that have been received.
Councillor Vandervis?
I'm unhappy with the $750,000 proposed for the Community Access Fund, the DVML. That fund has been on the books and paid, as I understand it, for a number of years now. When I looked at the introduction of the Community Access Fund of $750,000, I was sceptical about whether or not it would actually result in added community access to the stadium.
Sorry, point of order. Are we in debate
I'm just
here?
checking
I'm sorry,
if you've got sorry, we're not in debate yet. Have you got a question?
Well, no, it's a proposal that we drop the $750,000 community access fund, because when I looked at the community access that we had prior to the fund, and then the next...
So again, point of order. So process here is pretty sorry, excuse me, point of order 25 to irrelevance. We're in a process here where motions can be passed. There's not vague proposals through a commentary.
I'll just take an adjournment. Move that we adjourn for 5 minutes. Seconded Deputy Mayor Lucas. All those in favour say aye. Well, I would like to adjourn. All those in favour say aye. Against?
Budget of DVML, which would not be able to be covered at this point in the process.
Can I follow up by asking who accesses the Community Access Fund? I think I'm aware that the Dunedin Symphony Orchestra, that possibly Moana Pacifica event, there would be a long list of community groups that would not be able to access any of the council facilities, that the stadium, the Dunedin venues, the town hall, etc. Would that be the outcome of this, is that communities would not be able to access those?
Well, they would, if they wanted to access it, they would not have a subsidy available to them for the cost of the facility. So some may be able to find other ways of doing it, but broadly, a whole raft of community organisations would no longer be able to utilise the town hall. If council wished to reconsider this fund, the right time to do that is part of the 10-year plan, because there are broader implications for the ongoing financial viability of our companies, and it's likely to be significant enough that you would want to consult with your community directly on this question. So that would be my advice to you, that if you want to make a change, the best kind of resolution would be to ask that this money is, that staff prepare a review of this for consideration as part of the 10-year plan.
Point of order. The claim by the Mayor...
Excuse me?
Point of order.
Okay.
The claim by the Mayor, 25.2, misrepresentation. And please don't interrupt, Councillor Walker. I'm speaking to the Mayor, not to you.
No, you're speaking to the Deputy Mayor, because if it's a point of order against me, I cannot listen to it.
My point of order is that the Dunedin Symphony Orchestra is not able to use the Community Access Fund. The Dunedin Centre is a different issue altogether. That's not what I'm talking about. It's misleading to conflate the two.
Councillor, I don't need advice on this, because I know for a fact that the Dunedin Symphony Orchestra does access this fund, and we have heard from Ms Harris sitting at this very table time and time again that without this access fund, the money that they receive through other mechanisms, through the Dunedin City Council grants, would go straight into paying for that. So I will not uphold that. That is not correct. They do access. It is for all facilities managed by DVML.
Community Access is stadium. Dunedin Centre is town hall. You've got them confused.
Right, I move that we note the report for note the report and thank the people for the funding request, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lucas. And as we have discussed, we have had a few requests for funding from the Dunedin Tracks Network Trust, from the Dunedin Gymnastic Academy, and from the Wakawaiti Coast Community Board. And in the table attached, there's information about the process around those. And I think that we have, I've got you down on the list, Councillor Van Vis. And I note that, sorry, I've lost my train of thought now. If people would put their hands up once I finish speaking, that would be
I'm sorry, I have a
useful. Thank you.
process question, please.
Yes.
Are we taking these grants now as a motion, or what is
No,
happening?
I'm noting the report. So we're not, there are people that have made requests and no one has put a motion up to grant any of the requests.
But is the motion not to note the report?
The motion is to note the report.
Can we speak to the motion, please?
Yes, well, I just...
Oh, just, Councillor,
explain the
again,
process?
the Mayor as the mover gets to speak first, so she is exercising that right. Once she has finished, she'll call for speakers.
Right. Thank you for all the submitters. I think we've worked quite hard on helping people understand what the process is, that we make a lot of decisions around funding in the long-term plan. And I think that this has certainly, over my 6.5 years on council, been a noticeable difference from when I first came in, and annual plans were awash with requests for funding. However, we have talked to the many community groups and people who have applied for funding and shared with them the information and the process around the long-term plan and how that works, about talking to councillors, working up with their support groups, community groups to find good opportunities for funding, and then bring those to the annual report, to the long-term plan, which is the way we are allocating this funding. So I think that's a good process that people are beginning to understand, and that reflects on the small amounts of funding that were asked for during this annual plan process. So I've got Councillor Van Vis, then Councillor Gaylor.
I'm not happy that we're in a position of looking at a grants list that we're asked to note, when a number of these grants, in my view, and they're only ones that I have limited knowledge of, a lot of these grants I know nothing about. A number of these grants that are on the list, to me, don't pass the threshold of being able to be included in a list. If we look at the page 123, the Te Kotaora grant of $61,000, nobody here appears to know exactly what this grant is for, and nobody can tell me who it's even going to be paid to. I don't believe it should be on the list, and it should be stricken off.
Sorry, point of order. That is 25-2, total misrepresentation. The explanation was given earlier about that $61,000, so that is just unfair of Councillor Van.
It was not, actually.
Excuse me, we're not here to argue about this. I will uphold the point of order, because it was discussed about what this Aotearoa grant was directly related to Aotearoa, the environment strategy, and reports about that have come to council. Reports about all of the grants have come to the council in the last few years. You may continue.
Can I continue?
Yes, I just said you may continue.
A grant that is related to an environment strategy is not, in my view, a reason to have it on the list, or any idea of who actually receives the grant. But moving on, page 125, if we're looking at the Community Access Fund for events in the stadium, $750,000. I was a councillor at the time when this was mooted as a way of getting more community events in the stadium. The amount was paid to DVML, I believe, and I compared the number of community events at the stadium in the year prior to the payment of $750,000, and then in the year after it had been paid, and there were no additional events to speak of. To my mind, that means that the $750,000 in fact, didn't achieve the aim of increasing community use of the stadium.
Thank you, Councillor. You're out of time. Councillor Gaylor, then Councillor Lund.
I don't think that if we were to have work done on our house, we would let the contractor know what our budget is beforehand. We would not say, here's an open checkbook. I feel as though this is what we're doing here. It feels the wrong way around. We've got, now we're putting significant knowledge in our community as to how much money we've got. 3.3 million, 3.95 million. It's a lot of money. I'm not happy with some of the responses, particularly around one of the grants that Councillor Vandervis raised. We still don't know, and the staff acknowledged, we do not know who this is going to and why. I don't believe we have a satisfactory answer there or level of information that we should have that even auditors would demand of this council. So I'm not happy with supporting this. It feels, it just doesn't feel right in a very heightened environment of spending crisis, of a economic crisis that we're having, that we should sit here and look at this and allocate this amount of money for this amount of information, which is significantly below par. Thank you.
Councillor Lund, then Councillor Ong.
I'd like to move an amendment to that would read that we would reduce the contestable grants and the service level agreements to the DCC-owned companies, excluding community grants, in a tiered approach that will be 0% reduction up to $15,000, 4% reduction from $15,000 to $100,000, 6% from $100,000 to $500,000, and 8% for grants of over $500,000. As Councillor Chambers
Could
said,
you please put that in writing to the CEO?
Sure.
We'll just take a short adjournment. I move that we adjourn.
Have a second, if I could ask me.
I'm sure he does.
I would like to second that.
And we'll just take advice, please, if that's possible without community consultation.
So just councillors, in conversation with Councillor Lund, this is proposing to reduce the contestable grants fund only by $200,000 and then have staff report back on how to reallocate it because rates relief is within there, and so the councillor doesn't want to trim that necessarily. So there would need to be some staff work done on that. At this point, it's not possible to change the DVML funding without a conversation with them. So that's probably a 10-year plan process. So that's where that is at. And in conversation with the CFO, this is doable in terms of being able to still adopt the budgets and set the rates.
Right, Councillor Lund, would you like to speak to this?
How long do I have, Mayor Barker?
3 minutes.
Okay, so as Councillor Chambers mentioned earlier, it's all about money. And we are facing, as we've heard, a constrained environment, and now is not the time to discuss specific grants, as we've tried to do today, but we do need to do something. We have to do something, and I think that a tiered reduction, and I'll leave it to staff, the intention here is that the smaller grants, the community grants, of up to say $15,000 are not affected, and one of the biggest grants that will be affected will be the Heritage Fund. And of course I'm passionate about heritage, but I am fully on board with the idea that we have to make a reduction. And I'd like to give council some context here that comparable councils like Nelson and Invercargill, they have grant budgets in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, not in the millions. We are a very generous council, but we need to send a signal that we do expect value, and we have to respond to the pressure from our ratepayers who say that our long-term increases are simply not sustainable. We made a decision yesterday to not to have zero increases for social housing, and we've made that decision. We'll do that. We now need to find other ways. We cannot keep spending indefinitely and not look at the consequences of that. So I think this is not an onerous thing. The sky will not fall if we do this. Life will go on for those groups, but it does send a very strong signal that we cannot continue as we are. And this is just a small step. This is just a first step, and there will undoubtedly be some grants that we will have to look very, very hard at. But we're simply trying to have a position where everybody who receives a grant contributes some reduction, but those who are best able to absorb the reductions contribute more. That's fair and that's equitable.
Who else would like to speak? Councillor Vandervis.
200,000 saving is certainly something which I think is helpful. I don't think it's enough. I think we've got far too much in these grants that roll over year after year, almost always to the same groups. The well-connected groups are those that basically appear on the list, and we get to know them sort of pretty well after a few years because they're always there. 200,000 is going to be very easy to do, in my view, especially since 61,000 that I've identified earlier for the TLRI grant hasn't been uplifted for years anyway, and the remaining 140 grand I'm sure could be easily trimmed from some of these groups on the understanding that we need to get our rates rise down to a government mandated 2%. The inability of this council to trim pretty much anything so far has been extremely disappointing to me. I believe that we could have trimmed at least $20 to $30 million out of the budget. The staff had given us options where we could have done so. We haven't. What this council has done thus far is spend, spend, spend. For tomorrow, they pay.
Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Mayor Barker. And I guess I think we need to try and turn this conversation, rather heated conversation, into a positive by looking at the probability, I think, that this council should undertake a full grants review. And the reason I say that is that I sit on the Heritage Fund and also now chair of the grant subcommittee. And I think all councillors need to be aware, the Heritage Fund, in the short time that I've been on it, we had an application from one of the wealthiest families in Dunedin to re-roof their house. We had an application from an Auckland property developer who bought a little cottage down the bay and immediately applied to the Heritage Fund for the ratepayers of Dunedin to assist him to restore that cottage.
So just this point of order, I'm just cautioning the chair to make the speaker aware of confidentiality required around the applications.
The applications are confidential to those funds.
I haven't disclosed who these people are. I'm just okay. All right.
Yeah, well, I think you just need to be very careful about.
I'll note that.
Yeah.
But I think this is the issue that I'm trying to point out here is that these grants are not often as honourable as applications are as honourable as they should be.
I'm going to call a point of order, which is I think between C, misrepresentation, or disrespectful, B, 25.2.B, because many people apply for those grants, and this is disrespectful to our community who apply for those grants. I think that you need to withdraw and apologise to the community for that.
I will withdraw and apologise. That was not the intention of the comment. The intention was to alert the council that I certainly believe there should be a full review of the grants, and with a view to getting a better understanding of what this money's going to, but also the integrity of the way that it's being applied. Thank you.
Councillor Mayhem.
If you want to look really hard at the grants, you can look in Squiz Consult, because all of the grants that are allocated previously and currently are sitting there. The information's available to everyone. Just looking in Big Tin Can and asking about the controversial grant that Mr. Vandervis is referring to, Te Aotearoa grant. It's very clear. Open Urban Sanctuary, the Town Belt Kaitiaki Group, which are children, the Trap Library for community groups, the Open Valley Urban Eco Sanctuary. These amounts of monies are not just going to one person. There are a number of groups applying. For example, the fund we're allocating this afternoon, the Contestable Events Grant, is broken into two parts. There's the March round of funding and then the September round of funding. So there's so many people applying. The funds remain the same, but the number of applicants have doubled. These are draft budgets also, so they're yet to be allocated. And I'd like to point out, Mr. Lund said, he used Nelson and Invercargill as examples. We are geographically the 10th largest city in the world. That's a lot of area that we are sharing these funds across, and a lot of groups, a lot of organisations, place-based, community, and referencing DVML again, it's not just about the stadium, it's all of the events that happen at...
Point of order, misrepresentation. I did not refer to the stadium at all.
I said Mr. Vandervis.
I'm not going to uphold the point of order. You can continue. Oh, you've got 12
I've
seconds.
finished. We don't have time to keep going on this.
Councillor Gaylor.
I'm very happy to second this motion. I think it's a drop in the bucket and the least that we can do, given that on Wednesday we actually added money to the budget rather than took it away. Most other councils in New Zealand are doing the opposite. So I also think that given the amount of information that we have here about the grants, and I support wholeheartedly what Councillor Sims is asking for, which is a review of the grants budget. I too have sat on the on the Heritage Committee, and I've seen a couple of things that concern me also. But when it comes to information here, we shouldn't have to dig in the tin can or whatever it is to find the information that we need and to present it to the public. And also regards to grants, if one grant is named under one name and then in actual fact 6 or 7 groups are getting it, then that information needs to be clear and transparent to the council when we go to vote. So I'm wholeheartedly in support of this. It's the very least we can do for ratepayers who are watching us very, very closely at the moment and expecting us to do what other councils are doing throughout New Zealand and actually recognise that times are tough. And this is actually our new vulnerable group is our ratepayers. So we should be actually thinking about them. They are the real vulnerable group out there, the people that cannot afford to pay. Thank you.
Councillor Lucas, Hall, Treadwell, Gary. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Lucas.
There'll be no surprise to my colleagues that I will support this because you've heard me around this table talk about the quantum of grants, and as the Mayor Sophie mentioned, I've been championing for the grants review, which is in process. I would like to remind councillors that it is in process. And the other thing that I would please note is that when the grants are allocated, this is just the budget, and then the grant subcommittee allocate to various groups, that then is made public. There is full transparency. I just want that noted. But we need to be, and as I mentioned, and when we had the same conversation on Wednesday about housing rentals, and it's much easier to incrementally, slowly increase something. It's also easier to incrementally, slowly decrease something, because the world that we're going to be coming to in the rates capping environment, grants is going to be an area that we're going to absolutely have to put under the microscope. So just start to shave a little bit off, because I believe that we're going to have to shave more than a little bit off in the future.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Your Worship. I understand the desire to find savings, but I do not think this is the right place or the right way to cut contestable grant funds. If we want to review the size purpose, that is in the long-term plan conversation. That is where we can look properly at the priorities, levels of service, community outcome, and overall funding envelope. Doing it here is way too blunt. These grants support community groups, events, arts, heritage, local initiatives that often deliver a lot of value for the relatively small amount of money. Trying to cut this now feels like turning a ship by grabbing the rail. It might look decisive, but it is not how you steer properly. Let's have a bigger conversation in the long-term plan with proper information, proper process, and proper community input. For this reason, I cannot support.
Councillor Treadwell.
Tēnā koe, Your Worship. If we are trying to make a case here for value for money, every time we've tried to do an assessment of the community grants, it's the ratio of cost to benefit of the community is demonstrably massive, because this is money which attracts volunteer mahi because it's for purpose. So if we're talking about spending wisely and getting value, a blanket or a non-targeted reduction in the contestable grants fund seems like almost the opposite approach I would take. A review I've no inherent problem with, but there is a grants review currently ongoing, and we've had extensive discussion about this at an earlier meeting in February. I'd like to reiterate what Deputy Mayor Lucas said with regard to the transparency of this information. These grants are scrutinised to the nth degree, both by staff and the grant subcommittee, and that information is available. This is a big institution, and there's a lot of applications, so it does sometimes take a few clicks to get through to it, but it's not that it's transparent, it's just that this is a big system. So I won't be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Now, I would like to say that we have had many reports on the grants review, which we've been working on for a couple of years now. We had a report come on the 12th of February 2026 about the grants policy, which came through. Just looked up my emails on that, and we have been working on the grants review. So that is a thing that is in process. Now, with 7 new councillors, I am very happy to run another workshop. I think we've already had a workshop on grants to update everybody on grants. I think that would be quite useful when we're having these conversations. And I know we've got a councillor that's just been here for, I do appreciate they've been on the Heritage Fund, but for a short time, and it would be good to get them up to speed with what's happening with grants. We would find this difficult for community groups, so we absolutely have to talk about this and go out to consultation with our community groups. And Councillor Treadwell has talked about the work that community groups, the volunteer hours. How would we run festivals and events? How would we have community groups supporting our most vulnerable, that work in the mental health areas? There are huge amounts of grants that we give out to support people who are doing voluntary work and really, really important work to support our community. The grants are around investing in our community. And I agree that we need to decide whether our grants are fit for purpose in a changing world. There are many grants that are given out by many organisations, and we as a council need to understand where we fit in that landscape. But I think that pulling this in at the last hour, perhaps it's useful to have the conversation, but we did have it back in February, as councillors will well remember. So I can't support this motion. Next speaker is Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll be reiterating a couple of points, but also just want to factually put some things out there. First of all, I think the idea of a workshop, Mayor Barker, is really valuable, because clearly there's some misunderstanding around the table. I'd urge, the grants review has been going on for quite some time, as the Mayor has just described, and I would urge us to complete that process. I would also say that, in my view, the grants process is a very rigorous one, and also I consider it to be transparent, because the information is there and Council is made aware of the organisations that receive grants, how much they get, and I trust the grants subcommittee, and that's why there was a move to put that committee back in play. So there are dedicated elected members who are trained to understand the process, to read the applications, to read the staff recommendations, to question robustly, to challenge, and to come to a decision. So I think that's important to note. Also, as luck would have it, I happened to have a conversation with the manager of the DSO yesterday, and she confirmed that the DSO actually is only able to access the Community Access Fund for 2 of the 5 concerts that they hold, and it is an absolute lifeline for that organisation, as it will be for many other organisations. So let's be really clear about that, and that is a fact. In terms of the right time to be having these kinds of discussions, this is not the time to do it on the fly. When we're talking about money, we need to consult with our community, and we need to consider it incredibly carefully. And it is not one for on the fly, it is a long-term plan decision. And finally, the grants that are given out are not frivolous.
Sorry, you're out of time.
Thank you.
Councillor Ong, then Councillor Chambers and Lafiso. Councillor Ong.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And I hope it's clear to all, in the same way as across our council and our council entities, on the grant side of things, we have grants that are for our essential services. It is very specifically going back into the community members' pockets that need it the most in our community. And we can see it right here. That's in rates relief. That is in the grants that are going to our community boards. That is in the grants that will support our library. Those are essential services for our community. And then at the same time, we have grants that are for, what are they for? They're for financial return for commercial assets and commercial businesses that will enable us to provide more back into the pockets of our community members that need it the most right here, right now. That is very clear. Now, the example that is well understood is grants that are going to our stadium. Our stadium is a commercial business that is intended to derive commercial revenue back to our city and our community members. And if we look at what we can do with our stadium, there's a lot of things we can do very specifically. there are developers that I understand we are speaking to amongst our council members perhaps, or amongst our council executives. Those developers, those partners are the levers to pull free of charge to bring more events to our stadium and our city. That is what we need to be focused on, driving for free for our commercial revenue and growing the non-commercial services we provide back to our community.
I've got Councillor Chambers, Lafiso and Walker. Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, thanks. I thought for a moment I nodded off and woken up in the 19th century with Councillor Scrooge giving a speech and making a suggestion.
Point of order, and you know it, 25.2, disrespectful, settle down.
I'm going to rule on the point of order. No, actually, I'm going to take a quick adjournment. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. No specific councillor was identified, but I do remind councillors about respect around the table, please.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, but to be specific though, with regard to Councillor Vanderwis's comments on the coming rates cap, this is 2026. The legislation with regard to rates capping has not gone through Parliament yet. And I understand the legislation is going to recommend reaching a rates cap of a maximum of 2% by 2029. We are 3 years away from such a rates cap. So now is not the time to make crazy cuts across our budget, and particularly in this important area of grants, which are so important to our community. So I won't be supporting this motion.
Councillor Lafiso.
Tēnā koe, Your Worship. I also won't be supporting this motion. I think that given that the fact that there's a grants review already in process, this is just, as Councillor Hall said, unwise in terms of navigating. And strategically, since I arrived at council in 2016, I've always been in favour of increasing the discretionary fund to community boards. I'm also in favour of increasing the place-based groups funding to, I reckon, given the pain that we're going through, this so-called artificial, in my opinion, cost of living crisis. I advocate for $500,000 to place-based groups. But I also favour increases to community boards mahi. So I'm coming from that. And from the previous grants review work, it's been pointed out by the community that grants have not been inflation adjusted for a very long time. So we can, as Councillor Chambers said, our attitude as a funder in general, people around this table, is so punitive, and you have no idea of the real pain that whānau, and I'm not just talking about Māori and Pasifika, I'm talking about former refugees, I'm talking about poor Pākehā families. You have no idea about the pain they're experiencing. And to
Point of order. 25.2, disrespectful. As a councillor of 18 years, I've made it my business to find
just for a
most
moment,
people
I
are
don't
suffering.
know that that's directed at you. I think we talked about that, about points of order previously, so I'm not going to uphold it. Sorry, you're out of time, Councillor Fiso. So if Councillor Walker.
Listen, guys, I agree with a lot of what the previous speakers have the most recent speakers have just said. And to be honest, I've just been cogitating on this. This is literally one of the lowest points I think I've seen on council. And I think we're all growing up enough to know that a decision, listen, there's nothing wrong with debating what we do here and how we do it, but making decisions at the last minute on the hoof pretty much consistently throughout the world will be a bad decision. There's a time and a place for us to do this. Those times and places have been suggested. Some of the methodologies by which we do that are in train and in process. So let's just grow up a bit here. Understand that there are systems and processes in place within the structure and infrastructure of this council to do this properly in the right way, bound by the right processes. So absolutely I won't support this. There is discussion in some of this to be had by all of us in a grown-up way, in a different place, but not here and now at the last minute. And Councillor Lund talked about value, consequences. He suggested the sky won't fall in if we do this. The sky will fall in for some, actually. That's the reality, and it goes to what Councillor Laufiso was just trying to point out. And I would argue strongly, because we shouldn't be debating the pros and cons here and now of the benefits or otherwise of funding, but I would argue very strongly that some of the best bang for our buck we get as an authority and as a rate taker and a
point of order.
What was your point of order?
Councillor Walker said we shouldn't be debating the pros and cons, and then went on to debate the pros and cons. Misrepresentation.
I'm not going to uphold the point of order. We've talked about opinions previously. Right, Councillor Lund, your right of reply. Oh, sorry, Councillor Weather, I didn't see you.
Thank you, Mayor Sophie. Yes, this is last minute, but so was the motion voted the other day around social housing and the increase in rents. So I think that's a poor argument. I'm going to support this motion. This is not because the organisations applying are unworthy, and it's far from it. It's because we simply do not live in an ask and you will receive financial environment anymore. Households are definitely tightening their belts, and it's about time Council should demonstrate some restraint. Difficult times require difficult financial decisions, and unfortunately, not every good initiative can continue to receive the same level of support from ratepayers. So I'm definitely going to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Lund, your right of reply.
Thank you. Councillor Weatherall has made an excellent point, which I was going to raise. Around this table, we've been told, we've got systems and processes for this. It's too late in the process. We have to consult. But that wasn't in evidence yesterday when we voted to spend an amount approximately double on the fly at the last minute to have zero increases in social housing. So that is just intellectually disingenuous to make that argument one day and then do the opposite the next. So I'd like councillors who take that opportunity to think about that, and hopefully the people who are listening to this live stream. We've heard from councillors that this isn't what we should be doing at this stage. So I'd say this is exactly what we should be doing at this stage. This is a budget. This is approving annual budgets. And if we're just simply here to note them, we're just rubber stamps. I didn't come to this council to be a rubber stamp. We have most certainly got that ability to do that. And the other thing I want to point out is that this is 5.8%. It's incredible to me that, councillors around this table say that is just, that the sky will fall in, that it's going to have a huge effect. The staff will make it clear, and I've suggested that the community grants should be exempt from this. And the small grants should be exempt. It's the larger ones. And yes, we will have a grants review policy, and I'm heartened to hear that will happen. But we are the governors. We make the decisions. We have to balance priorities. We have to balance funding. And as we've heard from Councillor Gaylor and Councillor Sims and Councillor Witherall and Councillor Vandervis, We have to change how we do things. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, and this is just a single step, and it's a moderate step, and it can be easily absorbed by the recipients.
I'll take this by division.
Councillor Chambers.
No.
Councillor Gaylor.
Yes.
Councillor Gary.
No.
Councillor Hall.
No.
Councillor Lafiso.
No.
Councillor Lucas.
Aye.
Councillor Lund.
Yes.
Councillor Mayhem.
No.
Sorry, no?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Ong.
Aye.
Councillor Sims.
Aye.
Councillor Treadwell.
No.
Councillor Vandervis.
Yes.
Councillor Walker.
No.
Councillor Weatherall.
Aye.
Mayor Sophie.
No.
Motion lost 8-7.
Right, we'll move back to the original motion. Would anybody else wish to speak to this? Therefore, I will put the motion that the council notes the funding requests, annual plan 26-27 report. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against?
No. Recorded, please.
No, recorded, please.
No on record.
No recorded.
Right, we'll move on to amenity requests, and that is Ms Allen and Ms Fraser will speak to the report. Page 134.
Thank you. Thank you. We're happy to take questions.
Sorry, I had the wrong page number on there.
And councillors, you'll see I've had one block of resolutions that I've circulated to you, and I haven't received any others.
So when was this? There's
Yeah.
the
McMaster, in relation to
Okay.
McMaster Road.
Mhm. And Councillor Walker, you had one that you wished to...
And we also have an archives one that you've got. Yeah.
Questions? Councillor Chambers, Gaylor, on.
Yeah, just with regard to page 132, I've got 3 short questions. With regard to the waste minimisation amenity suggestion from Waikawati to build that building and help them to provide the excellent service they're doing, am I correct in saying that the best way for that group to proceed is to ask for a grant, from the waste minimisation grant?
I believe the waste minimisation, the waste levy can be used for initiatives to reduce waste going to landfill. It could also be something they bring forward to the 10-year plan.
Yeah, just with regard to McMaster Road, again, we're coming to speed, but and perhaps my question's been addressed. With regard to the budget, the suggested cost of $3 million to resurface McMaster Road, that seems very expensive. Is that a very high grade, the top grade asphalt kind of covering for the road to cost that amount of money?
Thanks, Councillor. So that's an estimate. You don't just come along and asphalt over the top of a gravel road. It requires essentially preparation, a new subgrade, and then asphalting on top. So, yeah, it's a sealing. Yeah.
It could be chip sealed, not asphalt, but that is the cost of turning a gravel road into a paved road, and there'd also be water table work required as well.
Can I ask a question of procedure, please? I just can't find the information about McMaster Road here. Is there a new proposal just being put to us today?
Was an email came through at 9:24 a.m. Did it not come through to you?
It would have, but I didn't see it. But I'm not happy to consider this, given the lateness of such a large funding request.
A funding request, Councillor, if you check your emails, or I'll get the GSO to put it on the screen. Staff advised on that basis that this is outside of the current policy framework, and our suggestion to the councillor, which he has taken on board, is to ask that the policy framework be reviewed for the 10-year plan, and that would then enable a discussion about whether or not council wishes to extend the seal network program, because at the minute the policy position is that we are not extending the sealed network, and there would also need to be a prioritisation exercise, because on current information McMaster Road wouldn't be the top priority.
Just so I understand, the email that came through, there's also a lowering speed limit. Yes. Are those two different people? I haven't got who's moved them in.
Same person, but slightly different issues, and so but we can put them all together. So all of these have been been proposed by Councillor Chambers. I'm assuming you had a seconder lined up. So
should we just go back to questions? Councillor Gaylor, you were next on the questions, and then Ong, then Vandervis. Councillor Gaylor, you had a question?
Yeah, no, that was my question. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Ong, then Councillor Vandervis.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I want to ask on the public toilets, and there are two requests. The first request, which is replace toilet at Truby King Reserve, as the existing toilet is in a strange location. Now that seems like it might be a nice to have, but the second one is to install public toilets at Green Island Memorial Park. That seems to be essential if there are no public toilets there. Can you please explain on those two requests for us, please?
I guess what I can add to that, Councillor, is that the Truby King Reserve toilets were part of the 10-year plan for toilet replacements, but that toilet replacement plan was paused by council as part of long-term plan. The Green Island Memorial Park bathrooms were in the same situation, so both of those pieces of work have been highlighted as a potential need but have been paused.
My question is, in the first case, is there not an existing toilet as is stated there? And in the second case, there appears to not be existing toilets, in which case there needs to be toilets. Can you just describe which have toilets, which do not, which do need toilets to be in place?
Truby King Reserve does have bathrooms available. Green Island Memorial Park does not have public bathrooms available, and it is a choice of council whether you wish to add toilets.
It seems quite clear then which needs a toilet and which may not need a toilet right now if there's already a toilet. And I'll ask one more thing. What's the distance between the existing toilet that's available near to this Truby King Reserve compared to where the additional toilet is situated? What is that physical distance in metres, please?
Thanks, Councillor. The distance between the toilet and what?
The additional toilet that's proposed and the current toilet that's already there but apparently hard to find in the nearby vicinity, please. Can we have a map, perhaps?
It's proposed to be in the reserve, Councillor. So the existing toilet is in metres probably 30 metres away from the car park, 30 or 40 metres away from the car park on the edge of what was formerly the soccer field.
Okay, so a request has been asked to have a new toilet when there is an existing toilet 30 metres away. I think we're all very kind across our community to say we can guide any visitor to New.
We're not here for speeches. Oh. We're here for questions, and I think that's been answered. Councillor Walker does have to go, and he has put a motion forward. So could we have any questions around an archivist? Seconded by Councillor Chambers.
And so, if I may, Mayor, I provided a little bit of advice to the councillors on this because the original proposal had been to put a staff member into that role, but I don't think that is the right way to go about it without properly understanding the need, and also understanding if there are other ways that that service can be delivered. So that's what this report will look to do.
Councillor Gaylor?
Just about the George Street upgrade for Port Chalmers.
Just one moment. We're just moving on because Councillor Walker has to leave. So if we can just ask questions around archivist. Was your question around the archivist?
Yes, I'm wondering, is it not the case that most archival requests these days are made online, and can that not simply be done?
That's the entire point of having a quick look at this, because I suspect that once we do investigate that a staff member, while the good folk in archives would like it, may not be necessary.
So, Councillor Chambers?
Yes, I discussed with the committee of the Otago Settlers Museum Association the other day, and I understand that they've had an archivist. There's a vacancy for an archivist which has been there on the books for some years.
I'm just aware of time. Yeah, but
who do I ask questions of?
well, yeah, if you're asking, a question, please keep it brief. I'm aware that Councillor.
All right. Oh well, is it true there's a vacancy for an archivist, and that it has to be a very well qualified person who can take up such a role?
Yes, there's a vacancy, but we've got a number of vacancies across council that we are holding in an effort to try and contain costs.
Councillor Gaylor?
Can I ask the type of work that this archivist would do and where the community demand is for these services?
That's what we would look at as part of the report. The current role does have a job description. The community demand has come from submissions to the annual plan process through the archivist group and through the Settlers Museum Board, as I understand it.
Right, would you like to speak to your motion?
Before Lynn starts the clock, I just want to make it clear that the reason I have to go, guys, sorry, is that I'm being a Justice of the Peace. I'm due to be on the JP desk already, and I'm already late, so I will... sorry, again, was that explanation seemed to perplex you, Councillor Gaylor? Sorry for making the explanation if it doesn't sit well. Okay. Talking to this, Phil Dowsett from the Otago Settlers Association submitted about the absence of a staff to manage the archives, and Tom Riley from Aran's submitted, similarly pointing out that the role has been vacant since 2023, highlighting that the value of the archives has been severely diminished in terms of access, research and preservation because of the position remaining unfilled. I've sat here with other councillors and watched Mr Riley and his Aran's colleagues come to speak to us, to this council, since 2023, and his submission on 13th of May began to remind me a wee bit of the character Red in the Shawshank Redemption, you know, the guy, the lifelong prisoner played by Morgan Freeman, who appears before the parole board year after year, which is regularly met with the loud bang of the decline stamp. Listen, I brought this motion because I'd like to fund that position, but also realise we are butting up against a fiscally constrained period. Therefore, the motion I'm asking you to support simply asks for staff to prepare a report on options for the 10-year plan for addressing the provisions of an archives service at Toitu. And why am I asking that? The archives at Toitu, as many as you will know, are a major public and research asset, and the Dunedin City Council has already made a substantial investment in their preservation. To realise the full value of that investment, the collection requires a qualified professional archivist with specialist archival training and practical experience. High quality archival management is essential for improving public access, supporting researchers and family historians, and strengthening Dunedin's role as both a UNESCO City of Literature and a recognised heritage centre. Better arrangement, description and online access will also increase the visibility and use of the collection we have there. It will support future digitisation and strengthen connections with Toitu's other wider collections. So I urge you to support what I hope is a non-controversial motion.
I'm happy to support this. I think this is a sensible outcome. I'm probably wouldn't have supported adding an extra staff member, but I do support having a report on the options because we have both archives both within the council itself and at Toitu, and I think we need to look at how do we provide the archival information on our very historic city to people that are wishing to look at it. I do believe, because I also sat on the Otago Settlers Association group, is that there was some funding for digital archives at some stage in a project there. I can't remember the details, but I think it's really important that in the world of 2026 that we actually look at how do we provide these services to our public. So I do support it. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Chambers.
Yes, thanks. Yes, I think there is a lot of information there to be archived, but it's not yet in a proper online archive, such as Amanda was described. You actually have to develop and produce such an archive. And I understand that creating an online archive is a very specialised field with lots of regulations around it. And for example, Councillor Ong suggested that it could be done by perhaps a student, but that's not the case. It's actually a job for a postgraduate qualified archivist, and that's why such a vacancy exists. So I think the council needs to carefully look at this. If it's going to be done, it has to be done properly, so that a proper online archive is set up, but that has to be done by a professional.
Councillor Gaylor, then Ong, then Vandervis.
This service is a matter of civic pride. I think it's really important that we continue to remember the origins of our city and all our people. So I am very happy to support at least an investigation into this and to have a look at the costs of it. Thank you.
Councillor Ong.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And I will state, to be correct, this is something that, as Councillor Chambers pointed out, I believe we should have possibly a community member from the university to be doing. That could very well be a postgraduate student, which is a student. And then, of course, we have to say, when we're looking at the cost of the report, and then onwards to there on the cost of the community member that will be doing this community service, is that in line with what are the typical average and median salary costs for doing that? So as long as we are economical, and I'll ask what's the cost of this report, and then onwards to there, if it's approved, as long as that is in line with what it should be, then that's perfectly fine for what we need in the community. I will say, we know it. Our median wage in Dunedin City, I hope we know, it is 80% of our countrywide median average. So when you think about what we're going to engage in, just ensure that our reports are reflecting the lower costs generally of procuring services in our city. In the same way, employing an additional staff is going to be lower cost compared to any other part of the country on average.
Councillor Vandervis.
I don't believe that we need a report on this. To me, providing archival information is an operational issue. Not needing a report to us. Staff are quite capable of assessing how many requests for archival information are made to Toitu, and then simply putting it online if there is a significant request from the public. Going to the cost of a report and the time that we would spend, to me, this is something that should automatically just be done by staff, and I'm confident that they will do it. We don't need to have this report. Reports cost money and time.
Councillor Walker, you're right of reply.
Yeah, just very briefly, as Councillor Chambers pointed out, yes, this does need a qualified specialist. And Councillor Gaylor, yep, you're right, it is a matter of civic pride. And finally, Councillor Ong, you slightly missed the point that Councillor Chambers made, and you may want to look at the recording later. Thank you.
So I'll put the motion by division.
Councillor Chambers.
Aye.
Councillor Gaylor.
Yes.
Councillor Gary.
Aye.
Councillor Hall.
Yes.
Councillor Lafiso.
Aye.
Councillor Lucas.
Aye.
Councillor Lund.
Yes.
Councillor Mayhem.
Aye.
Councillor Ong.
Aye.
Councillor Sims. Councillor Treadwell.
Aye.
Councillor Vandervis.
No.
Councillor Walker.
Aye.
Councillor Weatherall.
Aye.
Mayor Sophie.
Aye.
Carried 14-1.
Thank you, and we will move back to questions. We do have another motion, in which I hope we'll be able to finish by 11 before the next meeting, which is around, otherwise we are going to adjourn around the McMaster Road, and there've been a couple of questions. Is that fitting up there? So does anyone, Councillor Lund?
Question for Mr. McLean. He mentions as the in the staff comments that there's a cost share dust suppression policy available. Is that widely used, Mr. McLean? And could you give us some quick feedback on that?
I'd have to get back to you on how widely used it is. It was a position that council took last training or the training before even.
Last training, I think.
Yeah, to move away from the current the practice of the time to cost share with the residents that required or requested it. So I can circulate how widely taken up that is.
But it's there, ready and available, and the residents of McMaster Road could ask for it at any time.
Yes, they can. So the otter sealing was done before that policy, and it was done very much as a trial. So that was several years before that policy changed.
It might be useful if the report on the auto seal was circulated as well.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
Thank you. Councillor Vandervis.
The Chief Executive has confirmed that for a long time now we have had a roading network seal extension policy, which basically says we're not going to extend the amount of seal around the city. Is it the case that, and this is from my memory, that the main reason that the council decided not to extend the seal extension policy was that when you extend a gravel road to a tar seal road, your maintenance costs actually increase quite significantly, and because of that, no extension of the seal extension policy has been the case for a number of years now, simply because it's unaffordable.
It's possibly a case by case in terms of the maintenance costs, and you'd have to look over a longer period of time. So I can ask the team to come back to you on that one, Councillor. There's also no co-funding for extension of the sealed network, so it would be entirely at the cost of council, and then maintenance thereon would be at the cost of council.
Oh, just from my memory, partly it was the political direction of the council, but partly framed in the sealed network at the time was struggling. And so it was about focusing on making sure, maintaining and getting up to speed the current sealed network before we went any further. That was part of the rationale as well.
But it is the case that a sealed road is more expensive to maintain than a gravel one.
I'd have to check. I don't know if that's true. It feels true, but I don't know if it is.
That was my memory. I was just wanting to check.
Councillor Sims, then Gary.
I just wanted to ask Mr. McLean if he believes that the heavy trucks accessing Saddle Hill Quarry, Jaffrey Hill, were actually causing the problems, or causing a lot of the problems on this road, particularly in terms of the condition of the road, and whether it is an easier, whether he believes it's an easier course of action to prevent those heavy trucks from using that road would actually deliver a better result than perhaps lowering the speed limit.
My understanding is heavy vehicle movements make the road surface deteriorate faster than light vehicles. I've talked with the team about scenarios where heavy vehicles were prevented. We're pretty limited on how we can do that. There are a number of rural properties down the road that would have stock trucks. You wouldn't be able to make an exception for those. Policing it is a problem, and people indeed accessing the quarries without consulting businesses, it would impact some businesses' bottom line, I imagine. But in a nutshell, I don't believe there's anything in the regulations that allows us to do it. The heavy vehicle restrictions relate primarily to bridge load limits currently under the current framework.
So can I just follow up? So the I guess it's almost that the council investigates the speed reduction. I know you're answering this on the fly, but that would probably be the best way of looking at that, given that we don't have all the evidence.
If I understand your question,
I'm just
in terms of preventing trucks.
No, just looking at the speed limits, etc. That's probably the best way with the investigating the speed risk reduction, because it says a full assessment and public consultation. So that would possibly tease out more of the information there.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gary, and then Councillor Ong.
Thank you, Mayor Barker. I've been drinking my memories as well, and my memory as well, and I recall the policy being reviewed several times from when I was on the community board, and clearly there was an interest from rural roads and communities to being on council and it being reviewed several times. And if my memory serves me correctly, I believe it was around the cost implications that the policy was adhered to. But what I would be interested to know, and the question is around the change to auto seal, and I remember that debate quite specifically. I was interested in the comments the submitters made about auto seal. Could we have something about the efficacy of auto seal in that report? Would that be covered off in that report if this was to go through, if this motion was to go through?
Not specifically like that, but I can ask the team for I talked with Ms Benson, and when the otter seal was put down, I think from memory from that conversation, it's not entirely designed as a suitable treatment for roads that have heavy vehicles travelling on them. So, but I'll confirm that with the team. It may be easier than incorporating it into this. Yep.
Thank you. That would be helpful.
Councillor Ong.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. When we're looking at the 10-year plan and the question of funding implications over the course of the next few months and the coming years, that's again also going to involve the consideration that we have on council amalgamation. I would just ask, if you're putting any report on this principle, there is a footnote to say, we know in the coming months what may be more clear. Can you incorporate that into the report? Because that's going to affect our funding options and maybe provide more funding options if we know with clarity the regional council's amalgamation.
Okay.
What I will say is that all of the reports that are prepared for the 10-year plan will be in the context of whatever legislative framework has been passed. So if the government has moved ahead with the ledge, then the reports will be prepared on that basis.
Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, we heard about the real problems in this road now, and can I just confirm that can individual ratepayers apply through normal council processes if they find a piece of the road that really does need fixed and repaired, the ceiling, because the ceilings is damaged by these vehicles going down the road, causing the problems that we heard about, and there's a budget to repair the unsealed road, sorry.
Thanks, Councillor. So there's a fix-it process for anything. People can either ring up or submit something online. In terms of the responsiveness, we have a maintenance program, and our budgets only allow for a certain type of program, but we do go and look at all complaints that are received and then prioritise it, so it either needs to be fixed immediately or it's a lower priority and gets fixed at the next time in an unsealed road, for example, the next time the grader might come through, so which may be some time.
Councillor Chambers, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, clearly we had two quite important submissions to last week concerning this matter, and from the chairman of the community board and from concerned residents. And they particularly showed that speed was a factor and lots of vehicles using the road are causing a lot of damage. So looking at the lower part of the proposal here, I think it's important to consider, can we reduce the speed on that road? And I think there's a classification of speed limit by NZTA called SAAS, safe and appropriate speed for gravel roads, which is 60 kilometres per hour. And I think that's probably something we could pursue that could really make a difference. With regard to the sealing policy in general, I think it's important for new members to think about the history of what's happened to McMaster Road. And from my reading, I found that it was considered suitable for sealing and perhaps for sealing in 2006, 20 years ago. But it only came to the priority, and there was a small budget for sealing extension at that time. It came to priority in 2012. And at the January 2012 meeting, it was voted that it would be done the following year. And proposed by Councillor Andrew Noon. But when it came to the equivalent of this meeting in the May of 2012, that decision was reversed, and a debate happened where a lot of things were mentioned, and in particular a suggestion made that the budget for ceiling extensions be shifted to cycleways. And that happened. And as you know, we spent tens of millions of dollars on cycleways since then, and I'm a supporter of cycleways. But in particular, Councillor McTavish, who helped win the vote in that day, she said something after being happy about the decision to shift the funding, and I'd like to quote. She said, "And as the people were not expecting any funding for 3 years anyway, it will give them 3 years to persuade the council to put it back in the budget." And here we are 14 years later, and the residents came to see us just last week, and it's not done yet. So the whole subject of sealing roads clearly is something that happens around the country. For example, Timaru City Council's got a very good policy, which you can read quite clearly, the criteria for sealing extension. And I know there are 4 or 5, perhaps half a dozen roads in the city which would benefit from sealing, and residents would like them to be sealed. But McMaster Road almost got there, and then the policy was changed. Interestingly enough, though, when you look at the 9-year plan, this very 9-year plan that we have, there is a table on page 115 which about roadworks and the infrastructure transport section. There's a table relating to that part of the city, but there's actually a budget, there's actually a line for seal extension, but it's completely unpopulated, as well as the table being mislabelled, by the way. But that's another thing. So the seal extension of that particular part of town is actually in the 9-year plan, but without any allocation of funds. So it hasn't really gone off the agenda, I don't think. When I came to New Zealand, I was amazed that honestly, that named roads in a city are not sealed. I found it quite extraordinary. Even the smallest roads in the UK are sealed. But there we are. It's a small population in a big country. So I think looking at sealing programme and a 10-year plan would be a good idea.
Councillor Chambers, I will just say that I am happy to support this. I think that we do need to look at the seal extension policy, and we also need to think about the prioritisation as well. It's timely to do this. Obviously, it was good to hear the history about that we were catching up on the state of the roads, but we will have to look at the funding implications as well if we were to extend any seal, and I think that's what the council at the time were looking at. But it is a good opportunity, and I think also investigating the speed reduction on McMaster Road might be useful as well to see if there's any alleviation that we can do to that. Councillor Ong, then Councillor Vandervis.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And I will be voting on this according to the 3 parts here, and that is on the principle. Firstly, there are, as we know, a scarcity of resources in terms of our staff's time and in terms of the financial resources that our council has to allocate to reports that have a cost. And at the same time, we have factors that will very well change in the coming months ahead that we do not know definitively about. And that is the amalgamation of councils and how that will affect our funding options. And at the same time to say something here can be put forth later down the road in the coming months. And then we have the essential service here, which is part C, to say, okay, a speed reduction needs to be investigated. That's for our community safety. If there is to be a speed reduction, that benefits our community safety. If it really is a case that cars really are at a speed limit that is maybe too fast for the area. So I'm going to say right now, I will not support A and B, because this is something that takes up time and money that we can look at down the road in the coming months when we have clarity on what's taking place more broadly for our city and our regions. And part C is I will support that because that is for our community safety.
Councillor Vandervis and Councillor Lund.
I can't support A, B or C. The request to review the roading network seal extension policy is basically a request to begin extending seal, which is unaffordable in the first place, and once extended then commits us to greater maintenance costs. There were very good reasons for not having the seal extension for however many years it's been now, quite a lot. I don't think we should go there, and I don't think we should waste money on having a review. Noting that the report will contain funding implications, I think is self-explanatory, no issue there, but if you're not going to have one, then why even think about it? Investigating a speed reduction on McMaster Road, I don't believe is appropriate. There are any number of gravel roads, there are hundreds of them in fact, all around Dunedin, which would be in a similar situation, gravel roads that you simply can't travel at the speed limit on. McMaster Road has 2 near right angle corners on it, one a complete right angle. You have to slow right down simply to get round the corner. I've been up and down McMaster Road many times, and I'm struggling to think if I've ever actually met another vehicle on it. So it's not a high-use road. It's got 2 right-angle bends on it anyway. Investigating a speed reduction, you might want to investigate speed reductions on gravel roads all around Dunedin. Good luck with that. I don't believe any of this is actually worth pursuing.
Councillor Lund, then Councillor Mayhem.
I agree with Councillor Vandervis that this is effectively a request to extend the seal network, and Councillor Chambers has referred to McMaster Road specifically, and I would draw Councillor Chambers' attention to the word triage. I'm sure he knows what that means. He's a doctor, and we, the question is, where is the area of greatest need? Is this a health and safety issue at McMaster Road? For example, are we facing prosecution by the Otago Regional Council for a public health hazard? Councillor Chambers in his election campaign said he was the health candidate for Dunedin. So can we honestly say that this isn't the area of greatest need or greatest health and safety? Similarly, can we say that there have been 212 crashes on this road in recent years, as there has been at the Mosgiel State Highway interchange? So I would say to Councillor Chambers regarding McMaster Road, as he suggested yesterday, that aspirin and alleviation was appropriate in times of triage when we have to make hard priorities. So I will not be supporting parts A and B of this motion because it's not a priority.
I will remind councillors, please not to sledge each other. Right, next speaker, Councillor Mayhem.
I won't be supporting this. We had a paper in February 23 that was about unsealed road maintenance. Otter seal costs $20 a metre and lasts 5 years. Bio oil is $5 a metre and requires application once a quarter. We have 159 locations currently registered as unsealed roads. A breakdown is across most of our community boards. That would affect 260 households. If we were to prioritise this, Henry Street in Waikouaiti would have the most residents living on it. We stopped using recycled motor oil in 2020. Dust suppression is not subsidised by Waka Kotahi. It's funded through our transport operational budget. Currently, there's only 22 kilometres of dust suppression roads in the current register. McMaster's Road is otter sealed and would require resealing in another 5 years, with 50-50, I think, is the cost of ratio to resident co-funding at this stage, and I think we should probably just stick to the status quo.
Councillor Chambers, you're right of reply.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Mayor Sophie, for supporting these changes and suggestions. Councillor Ong commented about the speed limit. I'm not sure what I'm sorry, I'm not sure what he said. I forget, but he commented on the speed limit and supporting that. Well, that's a good thing. I think that it's certainly contributed to the damage and danger there. Councillor Van der Vis suggested that this is all about extending seal, and surely in the 10-year plan that's certainly the case. Perhaps there is a case for a sealing extension programme in the city in general, but I don't think it would open the floodgates to sealing the 700 kilometres that we have. Just some specific roads require sealing, of which I think my Masters is near the top of the list. Council Lund, health and safety. In fact, the residents have had a health and safety paper produced about this very road, a public health paper, which demonstrates quite well that there's a very dangerous level of dust being set up, which is harmful to health in that street. And I'll share that with councillors. They didn't have time to present it at the submission. And Councillor May mentioned Autoseal. They've tried Autoseal, it didn't work. I was asking in my earlier questions about chip seal, because most councils have asphalt, have chip seal. Chip seal is a lot cheaper than asphalt, and that's what they tend to use on lower use roads compared to highways. And I'm just not sure why chip seal has become so expensive. If you think about inflation, the budget for sealing the roads 12 years ago was $350,000 a year for extension sealing in the council. Now we're told that the cost of sealing this 1 kilometre of road will be $3 million. It's quite extraordinary. It's like 1,000% inflation. It's hard to believe that the cost sealing a road costs so much. The hospital was estimated to cost $1.5 billion about 2013, and it's going to cost $2 billion. It hasn't even doubled in price. But sealing roads seem to have gone up by a factor of 10. It's
Councillor
extraordinary.
Chambers, you're out of time.
Yeah.
I'll put the motion by division. I will do parts A and B, and then part C. Parts A and B.
Councillor Chambers. Councillor Gaylor.
No.
Councillor Gary. Councillor Hall.
Aye.
Councillor Lafiso.
Aye.
Councillor Lucas.
No.
Councillor Lund.
No.
Councillor Mayhem.
No.
Councillor Ong.
No.
Councillor Sims.
No.
Councillor Treadwell.
Aye.
Councillor Van der Vis.
No.
Councillor Weatherall.
Aye.
Mayor Sophie.
Aye.
It's 7 all, so it'll be...
I'll use my
Mayor's
casting vote to say aye.
Sorry. Okay. C. Councillor Chambers.
Aye.
Councillor Gaylor.
Aye.
Councillor Gary.
Aye.
Councillor Hall.
Aye.
Councillor Lafiso.
Aye.
Councillor Lucas.
Aye.
Councillor Lund.
No.
Councillor Mayhem.
Aye.
Councillor Ong.
Aye.
Councillor Sims.
Aye.
Councillor Treadwell.
Aye.
Councillor Van der Vis.
No.
Councillor Weatherall.
No.
Mayor Sophie.
Aye.
Carried 11-3.
Right, we appear to have run out of time, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting until adjourn the meeting until the 4th of June at 9 a.m. The final report is around setting the rates, which is probably the most important report that we have, and it's we're not going to rush that through. So it will be the first item on the agenda of the 4th of June next week. Move to adjourn. Seconded, Deputy Mayor Lucas. All those in favour say aye. Those against, that is carried.